So as we speak this week in particular, we are seeing a very unique phenomenon overwhelm this country, and that is protests about Palestine, about Gaza, across over 24, in fact 36 campuses, including many prominent universities. There are sit-ins where hundreds, if not thousands of students are for the very first time protesting our foreign policy, protesting in particular their own institutions' investment in the country of Israel. And in the last 2-3 weeks, over 1,000 students have been arrested, almost a dozen professors have been arrested, police have been called in multiple campuses. I was actually at Yale a few days ago visiting after so many years, more than a decade, and I managed to speak at the student protest that was taking place. I have never seen a sight like this. In the main square, in the campus, there were so many students, hundreds of students protesting about Yale's investment in Israel. And as you're aware, the protests have become violent in UT Austin, in a number of places. USC, which is one of the most prestigious universities in California, they banned a hijabi speaker from speaking at the convocation. So this entire country is engulfed. You have people even calling for the National Guard to be sent in against these students. Never before have we seen this public sentiment expressed in this manner. Now, why are students in particular protesting about their universities? Because we need to understand, in America, frankly in the globe, the largest endowments belong to universities. By endowments, awqaf, they took it from us. This is well known. I'm not just saying this. No, they literally took the concept of waqf from us, and they then took it to a better level than we had it. And so the largest endowments in the whole world that are non-government are American universities, okay? Harvard University, I'm not allowed to praise it if you know my background, but the other university, they have $50 billion in endowment. My own alma mater, Yale, has $40 billion. Imagine, this is larger than the GDP of many countries. Harvard has 50, Yale has 40. You keep on doing the math, you get hundreds of billions of dollars American universities have. What do they do with that money? A group of regents, a group of powerful elites, they decide where to invest. And the fact of the matter, for reasons that are obvious, but I cannot be too explicit, those corporations that are internal, they put an excessively large percentage where? In Israel. This is a fact, we all know it, and this is something you can look up. These institutes, they invest billions of dollars. They invest in occupied territory. They invest in the infrastructure of this apartheid regime. So these institutes are directly bankrolling the apartheid regime over there. And so the students now are seeing what is going on, and they are incensed and they're enraged, and they're saying, we do not want our university to invest in genocide, to invest in the apartheid regime. This is why across the country, hundreds of thousands of protests are taking place, and we thank Allah for that. Now, we move on to the second point. What does Islam say, or what is the Islamic verdict on participating in such activities? Now here again, we get to this very, very difficult, very awkward topic, and I try to avoid controversy as much as possible. Nonetheless, there's a genocide going on, and there are very big elephants in the room that need to be discussed. So I will be a little bit explicit, but factual. I'm not putting anybody down. I'm not making fun of anybody, astaghfirullah. I'm merely describing reality. The reality is, the verdict depends on which strand or which maslak or which firqa you belong to. This is the reality. So if you look up to, for example, Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb, the answer will be a certain. If you look to Maududi, the answer will be a certain way. If you look up to Zakaria Kandahlawi, you will get a certain answer. If you look up to the Akabir of Deoband, you find an answer. If you look up to Shaykh al-Albani, you find a certain answer. If you look up to the Sufi tariqas, you find a certain answer. Every strand, every maslak, they have a certain flavor about what they want to do. And we have a whole spectrum. We have in this those that are at the forefront, those that make these types of protests some of the biggest manifestations of iman and taqwa. They will say this is what Islam calls for. They will say this is our modern version of a legitimate, spiritual jihad, not a physical one. As Fox News is going to misquote me, I'm not trying to say physical one, but the spiritual jihad they're going to say. And then you have on the exact opposite side, you will have people on this spectrum saying, protests are haram, protests are bid'ah, protests are against the sunnah. And then you have those in the middle. How can anybody in the middle? Many of these strands, they will neither support nor criticize. They will simply live their lives, teach their teachings. And as we speak, I would venture the majority of masajid of this country are going to be of this methodology, neither for nor against. They don't want to get involved. This is not a part of what they think is Islam. I am talking about protests in the masjid, and I dare venture, I could be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, I dare venture this is atypical in this, even in this country. Most people would not be talking like this. They would just think that this is not relevant to their Islam. They're not going to speak against it. Some people will speak against it, say it's haram, bid'ah. They say this is against the sunnah. Now obviously, you know my position. I'm not going to mince my words. By the way, for the record, all of these people I mentioned and more, and I'm not being politically correct, this is wallahi my aqeedah. Every one of them, I believe, insha'Allah ta'ala, is a good mujaddid. I have no problem with any of them. I respect and admire all these mainstream movements, and I genuinely believe the good in all of their movements far outweighs the opposite. So I personally have no problem with any of these strands. And if you're happy with any of these and more, I didn't give an exhaustive list, but any mainstream, then good for you, alhamdulillah. I don't have a problem, and I say both loudly and clearly, whatever one of these ones you choose, Allah is not going to punish you for the finer details. If you really believe that protests are against the sunnah and you are living a pious life, well then that's your ijtihad. This is not an issue of punishment. This is not an issue of astaghfirullah, haram or bid'ah. It's your position. Let other people hold their positions. And if you believe that this is the most important thing to do after you pray 5 times a day, that you want to protest, I also think this is a legitimate position to hold. I think all of this spectrum is a spectrum of permissibility. We shouldn't bring in haram. We shouldn't bring in bid'ah. It's something, your personal choice. Now, if you ask me my own interpretation, you know by now, you've listened to me enough and whatnot, and I personally am not a card-carrying member of any of these memberships. I don't have a membership any of them. I respect all of them, but I don't have a personal interest in following any one strand. I have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So me personally, with my humble opinion, reading the Quran, reading the seerah, looking at our past scholarship and how they interacted with the realities of their times, I believe that activism is something the sharia legislates, and that the details of activism are left to the time and place of the people. I repeat, I believe that the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ teaches us that you don't just worship in the masjid and then expect Allah to send a miracle. I believe the seerah from beginning to end combines between spirituality and between activism. This is my understanding, and I could be wrong in this regard, but I have never seen an incident in the seerah where the Prophet ﷺ did not take worldly precautions to achieve a worldly end. He actually planned, he envisioned, he had a routine, he did something physical, he spoke, he negotiated, he fought, he did what he needed to be done. And I personally believe, and this is the majority opinion, that the technicalities of how you do that, Allah did not legislate. It varies from time to place, and as long as essentially it is halal and not haram, as long as you're not doing something blatantly haram, then all of these paths are permissible. Allah says in the Quran, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'idati al hasanati wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Call to the way of Allah with wisdom and with good preaching, and argue with them in the best of manners. What is wisdom? Did Allah define it? No, because calling with wisdom varies from time to place to language to culture. How I will preach to an audience in North America in 2024 is radically different than how somebody would have preached to a Hindu audience 200 years ago in India. Radically different. Both will be maw'idah and hikmah if you use what is culturally acceptable. The words, the examples, the analogies, the tactics, all of this is open. Allah did not legislate. And this is, in my humble opinion, one of the problems of some of the more ultra-conservative or some of the more puritanical, and I don't doubt their intention, but I do doubt their understanding of the sharia. I don't doubt their sincerity, but I do doubt their grasp of understanding usul and usul al-fiqh. They say to me and others, show me an evidence that the Prophet ﷺ protested. Show me an evidence that he did what this group is doing. Firstly, some scholars have tried to bring about generic, incidents from the seerah that demonstrate the Sahaba raised their voices, the negotiation that took place in Hilf al-Fudul, the process of having alliances with the Yahudi tribes, with the constitution of Medina, Thumama ibn Athal boycotting the people of Mecca, economic boycott, and the process approved of the economic boycott. So they say this is BDS and whatnot. So they try to bring about, but I personally say this is the wrong methodology. I don't need to prove the Prophet ﷺ did it. You need to prove it is haram. I don't need to prove it is halal. The default is that all tactics are halal. The most effective tactic is the most halal. So the whole notion, you only need to prove a ritual, ibadat. You need to prove Dhuhr is 4 rak'ah, I need to prove it to you. You need to prove that Asr is silent, I need to prove it to you. As for how to preach, how to effect change, how to bring about good, Allah did not legislate how. So I don't need to prove to you. Rather, you need to prove that there's a problem in something that we are doing, something explicit. We're using sharab and khamr. Yeah, that's haram, we cannot choose it. So now you prove, generically raising your voice and bringing attention and bringing the PR move. How can this possibly be haram? So in my humble opinion, not only is this a part of our religion, I expect Allah to reward those students and protesters who are doing this with good intention, and I do believe this is a part of what we need to do. I participated at the protest a few days ago, and I just got a phone call yesterday. One of the major universities, subhanAllah, they took our sister's hijab, astaghfirullah. The police, they did this and they banned and whatnot. So they called me, they wanted me to speak there. So I will be going there. Unfortunately, I will not be here on Friday. I was scheduled to give the khutbah, but I believe that is a priority. They're holding a few thousand people to protest what the university did. So I'll be going there to give the khutbah over there. I personally believe, inshallah, if my niyyah is pure, I will be rewarded for this. This is a part of what we should do in this land to effect change.